My name is Heather Sabin. I'm tourism coordinator here at Monona Terrace, and pleased to welcome you to our first in-person Wright lecture of the season of 2024. We did have a lecture in March. It was virtual only, so this is our first opportunity to get together and enjoy it live and in an audience. But I'd also like to welcome our Zoom audience who is there too. Hello, Zoom audience. And I think we'll go ahead and get started with our program tonight. Thank you for being here. I'm really delighted to have these four fantastic women in development who are here to talk about their work. And I'm going to start by introducing you to the moderator this evening, and she will take it from there. Natalie Erdman has 35 years of experience in commercial real estate finance and development with a specialization in affordable housing. In 2019, she retired from the City of Madison, where she held the position of Director of the Department of Planning, Community, and Economic Development, and she oversaw the daily operation of department activities. In that position, she supervised a wide range of city activities related to real estate and land use, community services for low and moderate income people, affordable housing, economic development, and small business support. Prior to working for the city, Natalie worked for the Alexander Company, managing all phases of urban redevelopment projects throughout the central and eastern United States. She began her career as a commercial real estate lender for lending organizations including Citigroup and Travelers Realty Investment Company. Natalie continues to be active in her community and serving on numerous boards and committees, and she holds a BBA in finance and real estate from the UW-Madison. Please welcome Natalie.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you all, both at home and here in the audience. I'm really excited to be here tonight because I'm really excited to hear the three women that we have talk about real estate development and their experiences. And I'm going to let each of them tell you more details about their background, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a snapshot. So I first met Neujahr Morrison, I don't know, maybe 2005 or something like that, when she was at the Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Authority and financing mixed income housing. And then I watched her go on to work for the Urban Land Interest, doing various types of development work in our city, really well thought out and community-based developments. And she still sits on the board of that organization. And then I saw her start her own company called Neujahr Investments. And she's doing great work around development in our community that's really community-based. And I'm really excited to see somebody like her partnering with the Community Development Authority of the City of Madison for the redevelopment of the Triangle. And so she's going to be able to talk to you. She's going to give you a bit of a slideshow, tell you about some of the work she's done, kind of where she's come from to be where she is today. She has a real passion. If you know Anne, she's a passionate person. And she has a passion for the built environment. And she also has a passion for fostering community. So community is something that I see that runs across all three of these developers. So after Anne gives you about a 10-minute presentation on some of her work, then Nicole Solheim will give you a 10-minute presentation of some of her work. And I saw first Nicole doing great work in our community when she worked for the Gorman companies. She was developing property in Wisconsin, Florida, and Colorado, really learning complex financing structures that are needed to do community-based affordable housing development. And then she went to work for a variety of other organizations, and most recently is a VP of development for CINAIR. CINAIR is a community development finance institution, nonprofit, that is 30-year history of developing property in underdeveloped areas and property that serves low and moderate income people. Nicole has developed a whole long list of organizations that she supports, not the least of which is she's the vice chair of the Plan Commission for the City of Madison, which I happen to think is a full-time job. We have a former chair of the Plan Commission with us tonight, so and she can attest to the fact that it takes a lot of time. So to be a full-time employee doing development work and to chair the Plan Commission is really a significant lift, and I appreciate Nicole's dedication to our community. Juli Kaufmann's here. She's not from Madison. She's from Milwaukee. She is the president of Fixed Development, and she's a social entrepreneur. When you read about Julie's work, we read words like quadruple bottom line, where you aim to have culture, social, environmental, and economic impact, where you support local small business that will create entrepreneurial jobs. She uses words like community design, co-development, crowd-funded strategy, and co-development with community. So these are things that you don't often hear from real estate developers as they talk about how to use real estate to foster community and to create economic development for people who have often been left behind. So she'll give you 10 minutes. And then we're going to sit here. I'm going to ask them a few questions, then we'll open it up for all of you to ask questions. So Anne's up first.
Hello, audience and Zoomers. Thank you for having me here tonight, and thanks for that kind introduction, Natalie, and to AIA Wisconsin and Monona Terrace for this series. It's hard to go first in this audience, but it's actually harder to go first with this panel and with some other women developers here in the audience who are all people that I admire deeply. So again, I'm Neujahr Morrison. I think I'm supposed to start with some background about how I got to where I am today. So I don't really have a bio slide, but I'll leave that one up while I talk. There aren't a lot of women in the real estate industry in any aspect of it. Development, architecture, brokerage, banking, you name it. It's still a very male-dominated industry. So I often think about what, the barriers are to women being in development and why we don't see more of us doing it. And for people of color as well, obviously. So we're asked to say how we got here, but I'm actually really fortunate to have like a major structural foundation that got me here. And I can talk a little bit about that. But even when I think about like the foundation that supported me being here, still often I feel like a phony or like an outsider in this industry. So my background, I have to give a lot of credit to my parents, Tom and Hildy, but especially to my dad, Tom Neujahr, who founded Urban Land Interests, which is a local development and now asset management company in downtown Madison. Our first house growing up here was a Frank Lloyd Wright house, so it's appropriate that I be here tonight. The Lamp House, which was just a few blocks away from here on Butler Street. And then I grew up in a Claude and Stark house. So I'm the kind of person who grew up knowing the name of the architect that designed my house. So that kind of person. So it is in my DNA. I was taken out of high school and middle school for lots of architecture tours. I've been on a lot of architecture tours. I started with that foundation. It takes a lot of different skills to be in real estate development. You have to know enough about quite a lot. And over my career, I've kind of filled out the bingo board of things that you should know to become a real estate developer. But I didn't start out wanting to do this necessarily. I got a degree in political science and urban politics. I went to work in Southern Illinois for the legislature in Springfield, working on land use legislation, ended up in New York, kind of doing street level bureaucracy, sidewalk cafe approvals, landmark designations, liquor licensing for a community board. I went on to do business development for 2 architecture firms there. And finally, I found myself in a business school and real estate school at Columbia within the architecture school. Along the way, I married an architect. I then worked for a couple developers, worked for lenders, worked for brokers, moved back here in 2009, back to my hometown. So I'm really excited to be here. Again, thanks for the people who are here and on Zoom, but I want to tell you people on Zoom, come back in person to downtown. Like this is why we live here, are these personal connections. We have a gorgeous downtown. I got to drive by some of these women's projects on my way into the downtown. So I hope you'll come back down. It'd be good to see you here in person. I feel really proud to be working in my own community. I'm from here, went to Madison Public Schools. I'm raising my kids here. I think Madison is stronger because we have local developers and local ownership, and I want to see that continue, local businesses within our buildings. So in 2019, I started Neujahr Investments. This is our development company now. My sister Sarah Neujahr joined in 2021, so it's New Year Investments, which is a play on Neujahr, which is why everyone mixes them up. So we are continuing to kind of grow and foster our small woman-led development team. And this is really our mission statement. We're specifically focused on urban infill in Madison and our own kind of community and surrounding community. And with each project, we want to grow our reputation as a developer that's deeply committed to understanding our surroundings. And we seem really busy right now, but and I think we will be for a long time, but we intended not to, to be very deliberate about what we're doing. So hopefully we're busy, but we're still trying to be very deliberate. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the projects that we have recently completed or going on right now. 1722 Monroe Street, Ella Apartments, taking shape, our triangle, and we have a project I'm not going to talk about, but Terrace Avenue that's also on our boards right now. So in showing our work, it's kind of embarrassing trying to take credit for these pictures because it's not just our work, it's the work of our architects and the work of our planners, landscape architects, contractors and subs and neighborhood input. So this is really their work. Showing a financial model up here is not very exciting. So, but that's a lot of what I do is get the band together. 1722 Monroe Street is a mixed-use project on the Monroe Street neighborhood of Madison, not far from Camp Randall. It was completed in 2020. It was a soon-to-be vacant, single-story 1970s bank building with a huge surface parking lot and a big drive-through. Really kind of underutilized and kind of like a missing tooth in that traditional neighborhood retail scene. We created 63 residences ranging from 1 to 3 bedrooms. Obviously, we have a lot of amenities there for the residents: lounge, rooftop deck, gym, conference room. We have an eclectic group of people who have moved in there, many from the neighborhood. And so that's really great to see. We have 5 local commercial tenants, all locally owned, including the Monroe Street Arts Center. Ella Apartments is a project we completed in 2022. It's our most flamboyant and recognizable project with its large 5-story mural. It was also designed by Potter Lawson, same as Monroe. And we really, this also was a huge parking lot. I think it was like 80 spaces, and Ella's Deli, which had been out of business for several years. And so I had this great history of being a place that people loved, but it was really vacant. So we chose it, because we had developed a relationship with the family that owned Ella. We really admired what they had done over the years there. And we liked that it was transit oriented and urban infill. We're never going to be doing projects in greenfields. That's not in our DNA. We're people who want to be creating places to live and work in or by transit corridors and alongside traditional neighborhoods. So that is kind of our jam there. So what we have there is 135 residents. They're all income restricted. So they really range from 30% of AMI if you're a housing geek to 80% of AMI. So it's a 100% affordable project at a really big range of incomes, all coexisting. We also have 4 commercial suites there. So we have Mentoring Positives, Smiling Coast Braiding Salon, and Simple Cuts, which are all locally owned businesses for, I think, all 3. It's their first ground up brick and mortar store that they've moved into. And Andrea from Smiling Coats told me good luck tonight, or from Simple Cuts. So shout out to Simple Cuts. And Andrea, I hope you're watching. That was really sweet of you to send me a text. This one has a very complex financing structure that will probably bore you, but if anyone wants to talk about it afterwards or in the Q&A, you're welcome to ask questions about that. And then we're asked to focus on one project today. So our biggest project that's been in the news a lot that we're working on, that's been on the boards for several years now, is our partnership with the CDA. That's the Community Development Authority of Madison. The CDA is our public housing authority. They own and manage about 900 public housing units and another 250 affordable housing units. They administer our voucher program. And within the triangle, they also have this commercial building and some others throughout town, but Asian Midway is in the triangle. So the triangle is the area between Regent Street, Park Street, and West Washington Avenue. In the corner, you can see Bayview, which is under construction now, which is a nonprofit housing and community service provider that is adjacent to the CDA properties. So the CDA really looked at this. They have a huge parcel, really dominated by surface parking with kind of no pedestrian connectivity. kind of designed not at the peak of, I think, what most people would consider good design and planning, and really kind of disconnected both within the triangle and kind of to the outside world. So they have the projects that they have on it now are Gay Braxton, Caribous, Parkside Heights, or Parkside High Rise, townhomes, and Brittingham. And those buildings, are low density or moderate density. They're aging, and the study has concluded they're really unadaptable to meet the current needs of the residents. There's been a bunch of recent neighborhood planning efforts that have shown the need for housing and the need for a different kind of physical design in this neighborhood. There's a huge need for affordable housing throughout our country, but especially in downtown where we have great transit, great healthcare, great education, great lakes, great parks. It's a great place for people to live. And there's a lot of energy around Bayview's development. There's a good opportunity to create the lake-to-lake connection with East Campus Mall coming through the triangle. And, there's just a big impact, big opportunity for big impact and big ideas. So we've been working on this. So some of the things, this are the CDA currently triangle exteriors. We've heard residents are yearning for connection and community. Some of them feel isolated, especially after the pandemic. They want a place where they feel safe, where they belong. They want to live close to the amenities they need so that, they're not spread throughout buildings that they can't access or can't get to by sidewalk easily. So they want centralized community spaces, which will be part of the plan. They want their units to meet their needs. Over 90% identify as having a physical disability, but very few of the current units meet any kind of accessibility standard we'd see today. Accessibility is a huge driver for this project. They're excited to have air conditioning, more laundry rooms, elevators that can fit stretchers, better windows, accessible baths, and improved security. They love their location. They want to stay there, but they want to be able to enjoy their homes both inside and outside. And then we heard from them that, moving is going to be challenging for them. They're really some of, the most vulnerable people in our community. And, they don't want to be off-site during construction. They want to be able to stay in their homes and stay in the triangles. So there's some examples of the kind of units that exist in the triangle today. So a little picture of, what we're hoping to really improve upon. So this is our biggest project right now. It's a 10-year phased development plan for the redevelopment of the triangle. We're working with Potter Lawson, Psyche Design, Equity by Design, a number of consultants, Slipstream, to really create a plan. The plan has been created. Now we're actually in implementation for the redevelopment of this 10-acre site. Every building will be taken down and replaced by new buildings, but they'll be done in a phased manner so that residents can stay in their apartments until the new building is built. Some of the strategies that we adopted in response to the tenant feedback and to the feedback from the future people who are going to live here, because we're replacing 350 units, but we're going to be adding another 860 and a new grocery store for Asian Midway. So, we're not just looking at the people who are there now. How can we meet their needs? Definitely. But how can we serve more people here? And what is really the city's needs long-term as we grow? So some of the strategies are creating more green space. So all the parking is now underground. So where there was parking, there's actually more green space in this plan than there is currently, even with all these units. Again, finishing that East Campus Mall extension through the triangle, reestablishing a grid. So it's not a street grid, but during urban renewal, the traditional street grid had kind of been erased. And now we're kind of replacing it with what's primarily like a grid for walkers and rollers on bikes or in wheelchairs. And so that's a big part of this plan. Kind of reestablishing a street edge and creating those centralized common amenities that are shared by all the residents. And then maybe we'll talk about this more as the night goes on, but the city has some huge sustainability goals, which are a huge part of this plan. We're planning for enterprise green communities, but also one of the buildings being net zero ready, looking at doing probably what could be the biggest geothermal field serving housing or in this part of Wisconsin. So we're exploring a lot of things. We're hoping it's going to be a demonstration project for a lot of other projects that could come in the future. And then I think I'm out of time, so I'm going to end on this. This is a preliminary rendering. We're going through kind of some land use approvals now for the final part of our design. So it's a preview of what one of the buildings might look like on Braxton Place in the interior of the triangle. And there will be art and murals too. They're just not painted on there yet. So we're going to be looking at adding color to match our neighbors at Bayview. So we're really proud of this work, and I'm proud to be here tonight. And I think that's my time. Am I right? Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Solheim. I am the Vice President of Development with Scenair. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about one of our developments called the Collective on 4th. But first, I'll give you a little background on how I came to my current role at Scenair. Like Anne, I wasn't quite sure if, how I was going to get into development. I'll actually credit my husband, David, when I was lost at college and not sure what to do because I wanted to be a meteorologist, but couldn't get through physics. And he said, you seem to really like buildings. Maybe you should look into that. So I ended up getting a degree at UW-Madison in the real estate program. Graduated in 2008, terrible time in real estate, and then got my master's in urban planning. And that has really served me well, the combination of real estate and urban planning. Really, all of my work is very community development focused. And so having that planning insight helps me to understand what communities are looking for, what their vision is. And I really feel like it's my role to kind of bring that to fruition. I worked for a market rate developer. I worked for an economic development organization for a while. And then, as Natalie mentioned, for a long time at Gorman and Company for about 10 years, really, which is where I honed kind of my financing skills to understand how to make these buildings come to life. I also served as executive director for Wisconsin Partnership for Housing Development, focused on affordable home ownership opportunities throughout the state, and then got to Scenair. So I have been at Scenair for about 3 years now. I work on primarily low-income housing tax credit developments in Wisconsin. We also have a presence on the East Coast and in Michigan. So I have colleagues there and serve on the Plan Commission with Liddell. And Scenair is really guided by what we call our why statement. So investing in people and places to transform lives through financial tools and development. Of course, I work on the development side, but Scenair is a large nonprofit CDFI organization or community development financial institution. We invest in affordable housing. We do lending for affordable housing. And it's really, because we believe that everyone deserves the opportunities that come with living in a healthy community. So I'm going to focus on a development called the Collective on 4th. This is a project that we have in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It started with a request for proposal process that the city issued. A lot of our developments do come from an RFP. I really enjoy that process and that it's inherently pretty community driven. A lot of times they've done some upfront community engagement. They've developed a plan and they're telling you, this is what we want to see. What is your proposal? What can you bring to us? So that RFP was actually issued in 2021, and the city had compiled and owned most of the land. And that's also very helpful because our process is long. We just started construction at the beginning of this month, so it's been a 3-year process to get from that initial RFP to under construction. It is an infill site. I'll show an outline of it in a little bit. And it is a mix of affordable and market rate. We have 62 units. 52 of those are affordable at a range of income levels, like Anne mentioned, all the way from 30% AMI to 60% of the area median income. And we also have market rate units and also a range of studios to 3 bedrooms. So it's really a mixed income community with a variety of unit types. And then importantly, we have 13 units that are set aside for individuals and families that are exiting homelessness. This was a huge priority for the city of La Crosse. Like many communities, they've been struggling to keep up with the increase in homelessness in their communities. And this is one of many strategies to try to address that. We also have a public community space. So in addition to the amenities for the residents of the building, we have a space that's a flexible classroom style open to the public. And we're partnering with a long-established nonprofit in the community who's providing financial literacy, job counseling, employment courses on site for residents as well as the community at large. So here's an outline of the site. We have about a half block of property. All of those buildings were purchased and then demolished by the city of La Crosse before we started construction. The site is located just south of downtown, so it's in really close proximity to downtown La Crosse. It has great access to bus service, bike paths, schools, grocery stores, a lot of amenities for families. Here is a site plan to give you a sense of how the building is going to sit on the site. We have some covered parking on the first floor, just off of that parking lot. And then along 4th Street at the top of the screen, we have 2-story, 3-bedroom townhomes with their own individual entrance, really geared for families so that they have a little bit more of a home feel, and they can get into their unit without going into the whole building. And then on Jackson Street is where our community room, that public space, and the management office is located. And here's a rendering. So I just want to talk about, given this series, some of the design considerations that come up with a development like this. First, the surrounding context of this building is kind of tricky. To the east, it is all residential, small single-family duplex homes, small apartment buildings, 1 or 2 stories, pretty dense. The lots are small, but still very residential. But if you go 1 or 2 blocks to the west, it is City Brewing Company and the world's largest 6-pack. So that is quite the transition. And I think that's really what our building is transitioning. I think it'd be tough a 4-story building would feel really out of context if it was just for that residential portion. So we're kind of transitioning from the residential single family part of the neighborhood to the more industrial historic part of the neighborhood. Thinking about the team that we work with and how you have to approach design of affordable development like this, and talked about the complex financing. We often call it lasagna financing just from the layers. This development had 8 different funding sources, which is not actually that bad. The one we just finished in Eau Claire had 11. And all of those funding sources have their own requirements, checklists, priorities. So having a team that's really detail oriented that can track all of those things from the very start, what promises did we make, all the way to the very end when you're having your final inspections and it's like, whoops, did we do all of those things that we said we were going to do? That has been just, finding someone that will stick with you and track that the entire way throughout many years is really critical. And related to that, we have a lot of accessibility and universal design built into our projects. A lot of residents, we have a higher percentage of residents that have physical disabilities. So many of our units are built to be fully accessible or can be easily made accessible. Sustainability is certainly a top priority of many of our partners and for us going forward, because these buildings are affordable for at least 30 years. We are in it for the long term. But again, every program has their own definition of that. So in this development, we actually have 3 different green certifications and 2 different consultants tracking those. Again, having an architect that can work with those, has experience with it, or is willing to dig into it and understand all, what are the implications of all of these green certifications. And then, budget and value engineering and collaboration with the owner and contractor is really something that I can't emphasize enough. Particularly in affordable housing development, our budget can be very limited at times. When we started on this project, I was just presenting this to a UW class yesterday. So we were really focused on the financing. And I had gone back and looked at what was the interest rate when we started working on this development and what we closed at. I wish I had not looked at that, because between the construction interest rate doubling and our permanent loan interest rate increasing, we effectively lost $1.2 million of our budget between 2 interest rates. And that's hard to think of, because I think, wow, what I would do with $1.2 million on this development. But that really speaks to the team that you need to have in place and how they can adapt and how they can figure out creative solutions with you, because that is constantly shifting. We had our architect on this development is Korb and Associates, and we have a local general contractor. And Korb, they work on like the largest timber building in downtown Milwaukee and these amazing projects. And they give that same level of attention to detail to a development like this. They will never, make me feel bad that I can't afford the high level of finishes that they may have on their other projects. And that is incredibly valuable to me as a developer of affordable housing. They understand the end goal in mind. And if we have to do some value engineering, we all hate that term, we all hate that process, but if we have to do it, they will research it. They'll tell me the information I need to know to make an informed decision. And so that we can ensure that, at the end of the day, we're building a high quality building that will stand the test of time within the budget that we have. And one of the things I'll wrap up, so one of the prompting questions that Natalie had when we talked about this was, what do you hope to have at the end of the day? With what impact do you hope to have with your developments? How do you define success? And when she said that, I thought of this. That is Jorge. He is a resident of one of our developments in Darlington, Wisconsin. It's a small rural property for farm workers and their families. And we had a coloring contest in the community room, and he drew home. If you look at it closely, you can see his unit number above one of the doors. And that's what that means a lot to me. I think our team really takes it seriously who we are serving at the end of the day. Serving individuals, families, and kids is very personal. Development is very personal when you're tied to a physical building that's going to be there for a long time that people are living in. So that's what we're, aiming for. At the end of the day, we are serving Jorge and his family and trying to design a building where they feel safe, where they have access to the amenities and the services and the transportation that they need to be successful. That's all I have.
Hey, everybody. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me. I'm from Milwaukee representing. So I'm not going to do a ton of background. I'm kind of a make it up developer, so that's about as much experience as I have in it. I founded Fixed Development basically in order to use commercial real estate as a tool for social change. And I'm an activist by nature, so I really came to this work as a community organizer. Wrong way. Right on. So my projects are located on main streets in 5 different Milwaukee, Wisconsin neighborhoods. I also recently expanded into Illinois and am developing a project in the city of Evanston. This is a quick spin through my portfolio. They range in size from very small, 250,000 to upwards of 10 million. They all have a social impact objective, whether that be sustainability, wellness, or economic development. These are some samples in real life pictures. I'll talk about a few of these in depth. Main street retail, partnership with nonprofits, projects focused on racial equity. I made the brilliant decision to open 2 projects in 2020 that were a hostel and a hotel. Now one's a sobriety housing facility instead, and I've sold the hotel, thank goodness. And then that's my project in Illinois. So just a broad range, but the commonality is something I'll talk about as I go through these slides. Early on in my work, I asked the question, can real estate be a tool to advance more than just a financial bottom line? Can buildings have social impact and lead to environmental sustainability? I found this site in one of the most toxic lead-contaminated places in the country, which happened to be located right across from where I was raising my son in the historic Walker's Point neighborhood of Milwaukee. So I set out to clean it up and figure out how to do development and create an environmental beacon out of it, just using a do-it-yourself model. Figure it out as you go. I figured I couldn't be any dumber than some of the dudes I saw developing along that street without formal real estate training. I don't recommend this strategy. The 2 women before me are much more brilliant. This is the resultant clock shadow building. It requires 50% less energy and 60% less water to operate. Just take a look at that site. There it is. As compared to a typical newly constructed building, it uses geothermal renewable energy. For power, it uses rainwater to flush its toilets. 50% of that building is made with recycled and salvaged materials. Most obvious is the reclaimed brick that clads it. And we grow food on the roof. When completed, this project was named Building of the Year by the Wisconsin Green Building Alliance and was cited as one of the top 10 greenest projects in the nation by the prestigious AIA Committee on the Environment. The building is now almost 15 years old, pioneering, my friends, and remains home to local tenants that have shared commitment to both the community and environmental values. I'm really impressed by Anne's examples where we're talking about getting local tenants. It's harder and harder to do. This is a creamery, by the way, in downtown Milwaukee. We funded the project directly with investors that believed in environmental impact, and those investors now receive that triple or quadruple bottom line. We have cultural impact with that project, bringing cheese to the community, environmental impact, social impact, and economic impact. But through this building, I learned how hard it is to raise money. I mean, it's hard for all of us, but really for value-aligned work, it's extra hard for both the real estate itself and also the business owners who want to open in the building. So in my next projects, I asked the question, can real estate be used for financial empowerment? Obviously, one of the biggest, greatest hurdles is bringing to life ideas is access to capital, and it's hard to finance these projects. This one is in Walker's Point, this next project. It was a former tannery, and we supported 3 new small businesses that have become vital assets in this part of the community. We did this with affordable rents while also ensuring sustainable returns for our investors. Instead of banks, which I rarely ever use, we use crowdfunding to raise equity for the real estate and to provide loans directly to our tenants through private loans from private citizens. This was about 12 years ago when crowdfunding was in its infancy. Again, pioneering people. Seriously. 25 neighbors, just regular folks like me, were empowered to come together to fund the project and bring its vision to life. However, through this project, I saw the homogeneous impact of my real estate. There's my investor group. The investors and the business owners all looked like me. I mean, we're cute, but while we created greater environmental sustainability and financial opportunity, it was generally by and for white people in a city where the majority of residents are people of color. So in my next project, I wanted to answer the question, can real estate serve as a tool for economic equity? We turned to even more divested parts of our city where commercial corridors are hindered by foreclosures, absentee owners, and greater than 50% vacancy rates. And this is the Lindsay Heights neighborhood. It's notorious for having the highest rate of Black male incarceration in the country. Here's one such building that we looked at. It's called the historic historic Wally Schmidt Tavern redevelopment. That was its name at one point in time. The project was vacant. It was a foreclosure. It had suffered a fire and significant neglect. The redevelopment provided nearly $1 million in direct investment in one of Milwaukee's lowest income neighborhoods. We hired a general contractor from the neighborhood who hired subcontractors from the neighborhood that were almost 100% people of color. The building is now occupied 100% with 6 businesses. They're all local, mostly Black and women owned. Additionally, the project was also crowdfunded, this time by nearly 50 neighbors that represent the diversity of the community. No one else would fund it. That's what it looks like now. Its original restaurant was called the Tandem Restaurant, very well known outside of Milwaukee. As I was finishing this project almost 6 years ago, Milwaukee was making national headlines due to the police shooting of a Black man in our Sherman Park neighborhood. This ignited a civil uprising across the city. It was the precursor to the Black Lives Matter movement across the country, where pent-up frustration was expressed in Milwaukee, ending with many burned buildings, including a 100-year-old community bank in the Sherman Park neighborhood. At that time, I asked the question, can real estate be a tool for racial justice? On this project, we acquired the burned bank and created a project we call the Sherman Phoenix. The name is really subtle, I guess. Today, Sherman Phoenix is a state-of-the-art space for small businesses of color. primarily Black-owned businesses, all local. It's a popular place to eat, shop, practice self-care, or attend cultural and entrepreneurial-focused events. The building serves over 100 people a day, coming back after pandemic, and it's been home to nearly 50 businesses since our opening. Notably, more than 89% of the businesses that start in the Sherman Phoenix remain viable after 2 years. That stands in stark contrast to 50% of small businesses that typically fail after 2 years, and an even greater percentage that fail for Black-owned businesses. So it's a remarkable success story for its impact on the community and the entrepreneurs that reside within it. By the time that project was completed, I learned a great deal about how to advance real estate development. I'm still figuring it out, but how to do it in a disruptive and innovative way that breaks sort of the mold for how people typically do it, which is hard enough. Some of the key components that form our model emerge, and we're now replicating them going forward. So first of all, we use a co-mentorship approach to bring together experienced real estate developers and at least one community leader as co-developers on the project. When I started, I was the community person. Now I'm the real estate expert. The mentorship is bi-directional, creating an authentic, two-way sharing of skills, knowledge, and experience. In addition, it builds capacity through hands-on learning. The co-developers all walk together through the project. This is my partner on the Sherman Phoenix project. Her name is Joanne Sabir. She's an established community leader and entrepreneur. You know, co-development means a lot of things, but it ensures an inclusive development team because representation certainly matters. This is our architectural team, our general contractor team, and me and the co-developers. We lean into each other because the work is so damn hard, right, ladies? It's a support group, and all of us, because we're embedded in the community, especially our community partners, recruit tenants from a known local ecosystem of untapped talent that really doesn't typically get access to these kinds of developments. We're now replicating the Sherman Phoenix project, and these are my co-developers. The Aux project, it's called the Aux in Evanston, Illinois. It's a wellness hub for Black entrepreneurs. The co-developers are 2 police officers, ironically, and a wellness entrepreneur and a philanthropist. A second innovation in the model is the supportive approach to engaging our small business tenants. To this end, our co-developers talk with neighborhood leaders and residents to identify proposed uses that are the highest priorities to that neighborhood. The same dialogue helps generate leads on potential tenants, and ideas come from what we should do for community gathering spaces. We view our tenants as our partners and take a hands-on role in supporting their success. This support comes in the form of fundraising, mentorship, and access to social networks they might not otherwise had, as well as a community of customers, primarily all of those local investors who become their customers and shoppers at their stores. This approach is inherently risky. It's already riskier than it already is than traditional development, but without risk, these communities just remain stagnant. We've got to try new things. And it's you know, I think Anne mentioned this, it's relational, it's not transactional. You'll be surprised, you'll make a ton of mistakes, but it's also like amazing what happens when you believe in people. They rise to that occasion. Most tenant businesses can't pay for their tenant improvements or for their build out of the spaces. So as expected in the Main Street market, we can't do that in our projects. It's a huge barrier to small businesses. So as the developer, we simply have to raise the money for tenant improvements as part of our basic funding package. The final innovation in the model, and that's about where I start to come to an end here, is that we use a strategy to expand the financial mix for our redevelopment projects by including community investor owners. Co-developers invite local residents to participate as investors in each project using that crowdfunding model. It's game-changing to overcome just critical financing gaps at every step in the project. In this process, the project builds local ownership, strengthens community wealth, and creates a community of project champions and customers for our tenants, as I mentioned. A blend of private patient capital and philanthropy and public support supplement our model to get to financial viability. And these are actual investors, 43 of them in that Wally Schmidt Tavern project I showed you. Many of them are new to investing. Many invested as low as $1,000, and sometimes it was sweat equity. 30% of those investors are from that lowest income zip code where the project is located. I'll end with this slide. This is my current project in Illinois. The Aux is the name of this project, and it's shorthand for the auxiliary cord. And folks of a certain age might know that's the cord you plug into your source of music, into like a speaker. If you're on a road trip, you used to do that. You pass it around so you can listen to each other's music. The team selected that name because it symbolizes our project. It's an opportunity to connect and plug in, which is so needed post-pandemic. This photo actually shows our co-developers, our wellness-focused tenants, our neighbor investors, philanthropists, and public partners are all in this picture. And it's not at the groundbreaking. I wish we were there yet. We're not there yet. It's early in the project, showing how the collaborative model that I'm talking about is embedded. It's not a step in the process, it is the process. It is a truly collective partnership from beginning to end, and it's what makes all my projects special and possible. That's the highlight. That's how I use real estate as a tool for social change, and now we're going to chat together.
Thank you. So while they bring the chairs out. Are these on? No, they're on. While they bring the chairs out, I'm just going to say that each of these women could have given a presentation of an hour and it wouldn't have been enough for me. I could have listened to each of them. I could have asked each of them questions endlessly. So we're running a little bit behind time, and I'm going to save some time certainly for all of you to ask questions of these great women. So, you know, we might as well start while the chairs are coming instead of wasting that time. Go ahead, Anne. We could have. There you go. So I gave you a couple of questions that we talked about early, and I'm going to skip because this is AIA sponsored. I'm going to skip to one of the questions that I had at the end, and that is, each of you has demonstrated in your presentations that community is important to you in the development of real estate. And I'm wondering what advice you would give to architects in terms of how they can better work with you to really bring that community voice, or to help you bring the community voice that you're looking for into your developments.
Yeah, I thought that was an excellent question, and I don't know that I have a pat answer to it, but I've been thinking about it since we've been here. And, you know, community engagement is a part of like every project now, certainly any public-private partnership, like some of the ones we talked about tonight, but even on the private sector, you know, I think there's more and more pressure on neighborhood engagement. More neighbors want to really understand how this is going to impact their life before they think about either opposing or supporting a project. So it's kind of like not just our job, it's everybody's job on our team to be a part of that team. So it, you know, see, it's us as developers, it's the architects during design, and it's even the contractors who have to remember, like, you can't park there because this is bad for community relations. And you've got to like be a partner because at every step in the process, we are living in a community, especially when you're doing urban infill. So, you know, I think it's new. You know, I think some people do it naturally in architecture and in development, and some people have to learn it, how to listen to people during design, how to translate that into the kind of design that's going to work for them or work for the community. But I think we talked about how it's less about letting the community pick the paint color of like their apartment or their house, and it's more about finding ways to build trust, because I think that no one wants to micromanage. Few people want to micromanage the architecture, even of their house or their community, but they really want to have faith that the team that's behind it is open to ideas and will be there through kind of the whole process. And I think even into the management of the process. So I guess just remembering that it is part of that working together as a team, and again, dedicating the time. So maybe it is time, budget. Nicole, you look like you want to add something. Go for it.
Oh, it's on. The only other thing I would add, that's perfect. Longitudinally, we have to look to diversify the field of architecture, just like the field of development, just like leadership, just like everything, we need more representation because representation matters. When you walk the walk of being homeless before and now an architect, you're able to design in a very comprehensive way that's just profoundly different. So more people of color, more people of diverse experiences. When I did the first project I featured up there, we were really seeking to diversify our team. And I asked the question of my architect I was interviewing, do you have any people of color on your staff? And they told me there were 8 Black architects in the state of Wisconsin at that point in time. You know, it's just something that needs to change. It's on all of us. We're doing the best we can, but in your firms, seeking to really make that work intentional to long-term change that narrative.
So the other thing that I would like you to comment on is trends that you've seen over the last several years in terms of development. Anne's offered one, which is really an increase in the number of people who are participating in the design and construction process. And Julie mentioned diversification of teams. I think those are things that we're seeing, but maybe not far along with. What other types of trends are you seeing as you work in community and develop real estate?
I think, we've really seen in the affordable housing industry, affordable housing to be seen as an asset and something that communities want to see and wholly support and seek out. We actually, at Scenair, are partnering with a market rate developer in Wisconsin, and they have found that as they are approaching communities and proposing developments, that the community is asking, but where's your affordable housing component? So they needed to find a partner who specialized in that. And that has actually helped them be more successful in their work and working with communities. So that is, not to say that everybody loves our developments and wants them next door to them, because that's still a challenge. But I think there's just really just so much recognition that we have such a lack of affordable quality housing for folks, and that communities are really seeking it out and very supportive of it.
Just a counterpoint, you're going to talk about housing. So in the non-housing space, I think you're familiar what happened post-pandemic. In cities like Milwaukee, retail is dead and office space is dead. And we're seeing a trend that's very negative in that sense. And I think there's got to be a lot of disruptive innovation. We can't turn every one of those office buildings into housing, although we need it. I think one of the things about my model that has been instructive is that community building really extends post-pandemic. So people come back because they want to see those tenants succeed because they're investors in that project. So they see the cohesion of how community works. It's like a microcosm of how society should work. But I am concerned. I'm very concerned about the trends in retail and office. I don't think we can see far enough out to figure out how to totally fix those economics. And a lot of small businesses are suffering as a result of it.
Just that a lot of small businesses are suffering, but we also see these statistics about rising depression, rising feelings of isolation. As we lose those community-based businesses, you lose places where people see each other and feel connected. Anne, do you have thoughts on trends?
I agree with both of those trends. And I just do feel like in our projects too, and Nicole, you had this on the board, that we've turned a corner in terms of sustainability. There are and it's hard to keep up, but right now there are so many incentives for sustainable elements in projects federally, locally. And I think as developers and just through our MEPs, we're struggling to figure out the different incentives, figure out how to get them, figure out how to layer now 4 different certifications on one, and and the labor pool to do that work. Finally finding a firm that does heat pumps in residential or has done one in the last 10 years. So it's exciting. I feel like every project is trying to take advantage of those incentives to do what they've always wanted to do, but it's a lot of work to get there.
So good things are often hard.
Yeah.
And they take extra time. I want to make sure we have time for questions, both from those folks who are watching at home or from the audience. I believe we have a rover with a microphone coming.
Hi there. I'm going to ask Josh to move about the audience with a microphone, and that's so our Zoom audience can hear what's happening in the live audience here, the in-person audience. Welcome, Phil Donahue. It's a dated reference.
Down here.
Hi, I'm pretty familiar with the support that the city of Madison provides for important development that reaches some of these goals, but I'd be curious to hear from Julie and Nicole what kind of support you've had from the municipalities you're working in.
With respect to sustainability, I would say it's a tougher challenge in Milwaukee. We don't have as many local incentives, but generally speaking, the city of Milwaukee is an incredible partner. I mean, the work I do tends to have a social impact mission and it has a higher aims, which is consistent with public missions, generally speaking. So this, I can't say enough about the city of Milwaukee. I mean, post-pandemic, getting any plans reviewed and permits issued is a problem. But other than that, they're amazing. The city of Evanston, on the other hand, I still have that project underway, so I'm not going to say much. But it's starkly different. One way I'll characterize it is this. If you're trying to make the world more equitable and those are your values, recognize that, for example, trying to acquire a building that costs a lot more in a very expensive market is one hurdle, but then requiring an owner to hold that for 12 months while you go through an onerous review process, those holding costs are impossible and inequitable for those who don't have deep pockets. So there's unique ways to think about how to partner as a municipality on creating a more equitable city that I don't think they normally think about.
Yes, I'll echo that. And municipalities holding land, that is a huge benefit to developments. In our project in La Crosse, in addition to them holding the land, selling it to us for a discount and demolishing the properties, they contributed almost $2 million to that development, which is huge for the city of La Crosse. You know, a lot of that comes from that this was, again, community driven. It came from them. It was a top priority. So they were willing to invest that. It also came at a time where they had federal ARPA dollars to use. And I think we're all a little scared of what's going to happen when those dollars are out because they have been so important for getting affordable housing developments across the finish line.
Yes, I've noticed in the Madison community that there's been recent discussion about the the infill projects that are, the increased density, sort of ruining neighborhoods. And I just wondering, particularly, Anne, have you noticed have you felt that pressure or that pushback on that issue?
So I see it in the news and the battling editorials. And I've seen it in the public hearings that I've seen on TV, which have kind of been very embarrassing for me as a Madisonian, and not just in this industry. We don't have the Triangle is kind of an island, so we haven't faced it there. We've had actually a lot of support of it, but I think that's because a lot of the neighborhoods are pretty separate from it. So hopefully if it was next to them, they would be just as welcoming, but I think they haven't had to have that conversation because there is a big street between them. We're working in Middleton right now, though, and I have felt that tension very acutely there. And I think you've seen some of the headlines there as well. So we're not alone in Madison. I don't have any good answers, but we're definitely feeling it. I don't think any of us got in this business to be, yelled at by angry mobs, including our city planners. And I hope that people can take a minute and check themselves and think about future generations. Whether they're young or old. I mean, we say it's not an ageist thing, but we all have to look forward to the needs of others in a more community-minded way. Yeah, that's a
I
good
can't
question.
not respond to that, Anne.
Thank you. And I actually, can I say that Monroe Street, which was the first project I showed, probably, might have been very different if Nicole hadn't been a neighbor in the audience that really talked about, a lot of neighbors really didn't want that project. I thought it was crazy, but you were among the people who spoke out in support of it. It's hard to get people to speak in support of development. So if you have one, just show up, like, please, just, or find another way, maybe email the developer and say, would it help to do a letter of support? And thank you, Nicole, for doing that.
It's my pleasure. I think that city leadership has been really strong in this and the planning team and staff at the city. The reality is, people are coming, we are growing. There's not going to be anything stopping it. So we need to plan for it. And I think there's been a really forward-thinking approach to spreading our density across the city. Downtown cannot hold everyone, nor should it. We need to create nodes of density throughout our community so people can have access to the amenities that they need and support transit throughout our entire community.
I do have a virtual audience members question here. First, a kudos, actually. Kimberly says, thank you all so very much. Very inspiring to see all that you're doing in your communities and for all of us. And then I have a question for Anne. And this question is, at the Ella project, with all of the units for low-income residents, how does the cash flow make the building positive cash flow? And then secondly, and will all of the units remain low-income indefinitely?
Yeah, I heard a whisper from Julie, deep subsidy. Yeah, so that project benefited from a number of financing tools that are targeted at low income housing. So that was federal low income housing tax credits, which is the biggest program for affordable housing, state housing tax credits, which Wisconsin started just a handful of years ago. And it was done at that time that Nicole looks back at lovingly, where we had a permanent interest rate in the threes. Sorry. And so it's really timing and those resources that low interest rate was enhanced by Fannie Mae. It was a tax exempt bond deal. And it was a struggle. The binders from the closing, I think, are 3 binders of documents. Each are 3 inches. It was, took years off my life to get that closed, but it did result in a very affordable project at a range of incomes. It is income restricted for 30 years. And then after that, we shall see. But certainly, I think it will always be something that fits in that community. And, we hope to be involved in it for a long time. And the tax credit program actually also supported Mentoring Positives, which is a community facility that benefited. So their build out was a lot through those tax credits as well. And having those strong retail allowed us to pay for 100% of the build out of Simple Cuts and Smiling Coast Plus. Smiling Coast Braiding, Simple Cuts Plus, which are both women-owned Black businesses in our community.
I just want to dovetail on that. It's not really the question you asked, but related to how you keep these projects profitable. I am concerned about projects like this. When I started, my mindset was it's just greedy jerk developers who don't care and don't do these things. And part of the reason I started was to set out to prove you could build an environmentally impactful building and still make a profit. And that was possible 15 years ago. Increasingly, it is almost impossible for me to get my deals done. We all use lasagna financing, but I use neighbors who get no return for several years. We all use public subsidy, which is all of us financing these projects. I use philanthropy, which is just basically straight gap filling gifts to help my project succeed. What happens when we can only make a certain kind of building anymore because only the rich for the rich can make those buildings? And I don't have an answer for it, but it's increasingly difficult. Historically, it used to be we do only some public subsidy to get some low-income housing. And now it's like any affordable housing is almost impossible. Costs are too high. Need for return is too high. Soapbox. I don't have a solution, but I'm very concerned about it.
I have a question for Nicole. Nicole, you mentioned that it took like 2 to 3 years to get from concept site plan to breaking ground. Do you have any suggestion for developers or municipalities on how they can shorten that up? Because I too sat through a development. I started in 2021 and didn't break ground until just a few months ago.
Yeah, the main source of that development is competitive tax credits, and it's an annual cycle and extremely competitive. So they're usually oversubscribed at least 3 to 1. So the first time we lost by, I think, 1 point. It's a scoring system. And so we did not get our tax credit award. And again, this is where that partnership with the community is so key, because the city of La Crosse said, okay, we're committed to this. We're going to stick it out another year, try again next year. And we got it. That doesn't always happen. A lot of times when you get it, your purchase contract runs out. You can't hold it anymore. You can't buy the land ahead of time. So you lose the deal. I wish I could make it a lot faster. I'd say probably 2 years is the fastest you can go from concept to construction start.
I'm sure you saw this, Lori, but there's a great research that DMI recently did where they compared municipal approval times in the area. And actually Madison fared, I think, the best or among the best. And I think they're looking for ways to improve it. So, if you see them, I think that they're open to that.
Yeah, I have one. Hi, I'm Macy. I'm a freshman at the University of Wisconsin, also majoring in real estate and finance. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for taking time out of your probably busy schedules. You guys are all really inspiring to me. I was just wondering, I've faced kind of discrimination, kind of some diversity within my various clubs being a female. I know you guys mentioned some things about that. I was just wondering if you could share some light on the obstacles you had to overcome and kind of how you went through that and how you overcame that. And thank you.
Yeah, when I started in this business, I was lucky to have two really strong female mentors that were developers. One of them told me, the classic line of when you're a woman, you have to be the smartest in the room to make it in this business. I don't feel that anymore, and a huge part of that is the women that have come before me. But I also they were absolutely the smartest. I think that being humble actually gets you a long way in development, and having that humility and the ability to collaborate with others and bring together a solid team. Like Anne said, you're just bringing the gang together. Um, you might think that I would feel like uncomfortable going to a construction site. And actually, one of my contractors on the groundbreaking gave me a hot pink hard hat. And at first I was like, and I was like, this is also the most colorful thing in my wardrobe, my hard hat. But then I was like, what? It's the year of Barbie. I'm going to embrace hot pink. Like, yes, this is my hard hat. And if I show up there and I ask questions and I know my stuff and the subcontractors see that and they see me there regularly, it totally builds that level of respect. And I'm not afraid to ask questions to tell them when I don't know something, and they feel the same way. So I think trying to approach it from, what are your strengths and showcasing that can go a long way.
I do have a virtual audience member question here. How can people in cities make sure all the housing developments are spread around the city and not segregated in sections like here in Madison on the north, east, and south sides?
Yeah, I mean, I think, God, we got a former city planner. Natalie, are you going to take this one? Good. Oh, she's like, you got the big guns.
I think if you look at the last 10 years or 15 years, the city of Madison has incented affordable housing developments in certain areas that were on high traffic transportation lines, or that were near to amenities, grocery stores, schools. And so they have a point system, and you can get subsidy for your affordable housing if you're in those areas. And that has really pushed diversity or income diversity further through the city than what we had seen before. When you see the affordable housing on the north, east, and south side, a lot of that is naturally occurring affordable housing that was built in the 70s, and is of a lower standard, and so therefore it's more affordable. And so I think the city has done a decent job of moving affordable housing development into a broader range of communities. It would be interesting to actually look at a chart and see where those most recent developments have gone, because I can think of several on the west side, Hilldale area, downtown. I'm wondering if you all think the same.
Yeah, I think a big part of that strategy is the rezoning process, rethinking our zoning code, proactive rezoning, not to throw out that fireball, but having more types of housing that are as of right. So a developer doesn't have to go through a zoning process. You know what you can build there is huge, especially if you're building something in a community that you expect pushback. That will go a long ways in getting a more diverse set of housing types across our whole city.
Do your development firms continue to own the buildings after they're built, and how do you manage them?
Yeah, so we have a variety of projects. So we have some that we own a portion of, and the company that we're involved in and co-own manages them. We have some that we own a portion of, and we have a third-party manager who's just specialized in that building type. And then we have others where we're doing for-fee development, like our partnership for the CDA, where the CDA intends to own it and manage it long-term. So I think, like, for us, we're looking for the right fit for the product type. But I really think it's important. I really believe in local management, on-site management, local ownership. And I feel like those projects are the kind we want to do. And that's a big foundation of our success.
All of that. Two other things. One, I am hoping to sell a number of my buildings. So if any of you would like to buy any of them, the ones that I still own, they're available, including that beautiful Cream City brick building. The other thing I will say is that a challenge for us in managing the buildings we do own is that no management company wants to manage my projects. They're complicated, they're a hot mess a lot of the time, they're not typical. You gotta, just like you gotta build community around your development process, you have to build community process around your management of your building, and we have found that to be a huge gap. Absentee landlords have that name for a reason, and in commercial real estate, it's even worse. So we actually have helped one of our small businesses. One of my partners actually on that tavern project started a small commercial property management firm, and we helped incubate them and give them some contracts on some of our smaller projects to help them learn the business. Because sometimes, to your question about how do you survive it when nobody's like you, you're being discriminated against, you can't get the help you need, find your people and create your ecosystems when you can. Just find a coalition of the willing and do it yourself when you can't find it out there. Because I have found that it is the people I work with who are smart enough, and it's usually people of color and women who are my investors and my partners for a reason. We all get the same, we get it. And those are my people. I just don't do the other projects.
We do own our developments long-term, and as a nonprofit, we often will own it, through the affordability period and then keep it affordable beyond. We work with a third-party property management business. But I will reiterate what Anne mentioned, having the local presence, someone who is based in the community. For example, that rural development in Darlington is really important that we have someone that is bilingual there and who knows the community. So we have someone who grew up in Darlington and she still goes to school there and she is bilingual. And without that development would be a totally different place.
Well, we're well past time, but I wanted everybody to have a chance to ask their questions. Please join me in thanking these three women for coming here and giving you their knowledge and experience.
I just wanted to echo the comment of an audience member earlier. I was really inspired tonight by all that you do. Thank you so much. And thanks for your time tonight. I do want to thank our sponsor this evening, AIA Wisconsin, and I'm going to reiterate what Anne said earlier, which is if you are listening on Zoom and local, maybe come join us in person here. We do have many Zoomers who are far-flung and across the country even, but please join us in person if you can. We would love to see you. I'd like to toss it over to Josh Johnson from AIAW. We do have a lecture just in another 3 weeks or so, and I would love for him to tell you a little bit about that.
We're, speaking of far-flung, we're bringing in two architects from Melbourne, Australia, to speak at the at our state convention, and they're happily going to come here and speak prior to that. So it's Monday, the 13th of May. So it's coming up quickly, and they are Arca Marathon. So it's two architects, and they have a YouTube channel, Instagram presence, and 300 and 400,000 followers worldwide, and very entertaining guys. And one of them is his firm just won, I think, Building of the Year in Australia. So they are excellent architects and great entertainers. So that'll be 2 weeks. Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, the date on that is Monday, May 13th. I can't remember if you said it, but I'm letting y'all know. It's a little different night of the week for us, but please do come join us. So thanks so much, everybody, for coming tonight. Have a good evening.